Hello and welcome to another of the Head Honcho interviews. My name is Honcho, the founder of Acquire. I'm pleased today to be joined by Guy Brent, General Manager of BWS, Australia's largest liquor store with I think over 1,200 stores, Guy?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And reading a recent analyst's report, I understand that BWS makes up 50% of Woolworths Group liquor sales of over $7 billion.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Pleasure of 7,000 staff?
7,000 staff, yeah.
Wow.
So it's quite an organisation across the country, actually.
And I heard you service, over 2.5 million customers a week? So.
Yes, that's right.
Well, thank you, and that's quite a lot of bottles of plonk. So thank you for taking the time out to come and chat to us here at Acquire. So I understand before counting bottles of wine, you were counting beans as an accountant. So can you just tell us how that journey progressed?
Yeah, I studied economics at university and always knew I wanted to be on the commercial side of things. So proud to say I started off my career with Arthur Andersen, right. Trained as a chartered accountant, but left immediately afterwards because I knew I wanted to be on the commercial side of things. Joined Procter & Gamble then and had a great 5 years with them, learning about all the different facets of business. Actually, that was a great exposure to sales, marketing, production, and that's really stood me in good stead later in my career. Actually, I then joined BSkyB as a head of finance and did various head of finance roles with them, which is actually where I met my Aussie wife. So we were working together in the strategy team. Yeah. And that's how I ended up coming out to Australia just over 10 years ago. And that was interesting. I managed to get myself a job as a commercial director with Optus, and that then led a couple of years later to me meeting some private equity guys. Okay. And that's how I got involved with a business called Salamasters in a private equity buyout. I was the CFO there. We sold to Woolies in 2011, and pretty shortly after that, actually, I then was promoted to the CEO of Salamasters, and it's been a phenomenal ride in the last 3 or 4 years, actually, because I then set up the internal supply group for the Woolworths Liquor Group. We quickly grew that to a $2 billion business, and then just over 8 months ago, I was then asked to take on BWS, which is actually the third largest retail business within Woolworths. So it's been a great journey, actually.
Jeez, that time's flown as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you recall perhaps why and when you decided you wanted to step into the big boss shoes?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I always knew I wanted to be a CFO. Okay. And I guess my only career goal I've ever had really, I think, is I kind of said to myself, by the age of 35, I want to be a CFO. And I made that with Salamasters. And actually at Salamasters, I took on quite a lot of additional responsibility outside finance. So I looked after HR. I'm really passionate about people and developing people. So I was really passionate about creating the right culture at Salamasters in the HR, looking after the HR space. I also had the supply chain as well, right. And IT. So I was became a de facto COO. Yeah. But again, I was never really thinking, I wanted to be the MD or the CEO, and it just kind of happened. And I'd always thought, I'd always been a bit scared, to be honest with you, about being the CEO, because I quite liked the air cover you had as a CFO. Right. Yeah, there was always someone who took the ultimate rap. Yeah. But I don't even think about that now.
Yeah. Fantastic. And what sort of, do you recall any particular steps you took from a development point of view as an individual to achieve those goals? Or?
I've always really been into self-development. I'm passionate about developing myself as I am about developing others. So I've always, read a lot of business books and also tried a lot of different things in the workplace, actually. So I'm really, I try a lot of different leadership things, and I've tried a lot of different ways of building high-performance teams. So I guess that's one of my mantras. The other one is actually the CFO of BSkyB once said to me, with your career, all you have to do is make sure that you have the right building blocks. And as long as every role you do builds different skills and builds on your previous experience, your career will largely look after yourself.
Yeah,
and that's really, happened to me. And actually another great tip from the CEO of Woolies that I got was, because he was telling his career story the other day, and he said, all I've done actually is just given 150% in every single role that I've had. And that stood him in great stead. So yeah, I don't actually believe, many people actually, have these career aspirations, and goals to end up as, say, the CEO of Woolies. I think it. It's a question of it builds, and it's a question of really doing a great job.
Yeah. Question I've asked other CFOs that moved into MD roles: how do you think differently now as an MD as opposed to being the CFO?
It is actually very different, and the thing that surprised me, and in hindsight shouldn't have done, is just how much time I spend on leadership and people. Okay. I probably spend 75 to 80% of my week on people matters and leadership and setting the strategy. So it's much more about facilitating to get stuff done than actually doing. I guess the other thing is just a very different approach to risk. Right, okay. And that's something I had to learn. Throughout my whole career as a finance guy, it's always been about managing risk. Whereas, I think particularly in a large corporate, and this is what I find in Woolies actually, is people, the first thing people do is actually look at what the risks are of doing something, whereas, I really focus on what the upside is. Okay. And then about managing the risks appropriately. And I really believe great leaders have the right combination of head, heart and guts. So head is all about being able to, having the intellect to define the strategy. Heart is about, real empathetic leadership. And then guts is really important, like going with your gut feel. And certainly in my latest role, I've really been focusing on that in terms of using my gut and taking some risks, taking calculated risks. And the other thing I've learned is, to be okay when they don't work out. You're not always going to get it right, and to really focus on the learnings from actually, making some calls, because you have to be decisive.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating to hear. And what do you fear most about being the leader now?
There's nothing actually I fear. I thought I would. Again, I kind of, I mentioned it earlier, was worried that there would be no air cover. Yeah. I'm exhilarated, to be honest, pretty much every single day. And the only thing I feel this immense sense of responsibility to the 7,000 people who work for BWS. And unfortunately we do have stores in some of the lower demographics around the country. And we do experience armed hold-ups. And that's the only thing I fear. The only thing I fear is that, someone on our team will get seriously injured one day in an armed hold-up. So, I'm really passionate about that, and we're investing a lot of capex in intelligent safes and things to make sure there's very little cash in our businesses that perpetrators can get hold of. So,
interesting to hear. If I asked you to take yourself back, one final question, Guy, if there was one piece of advice you could have given yourself 10 years ago, what would that have been?
I think it's to really believe in. I think most people have this lack of self-confidence about where they can go in their careers, and I wish I'd kind of believed in myself more. I'm a real believer you can't do it on your own as well. I've used executive coaches now for the last 10 to 15 years and mentors as well, and they've been instrumental actually in giving me that self-belief. So really it is about having that self-belief, and I'm continually learning as well, and if I reflect back on the last sort of 5 years or so, some of my key learnings are around making sure that you use your gut instinct with people and deal with underperformers early. Culture definitely does eat strategy for breakfast, lunch and dinner. And I'm really focusing on building the right culture in BWS, because that is how we'll step change the business. Nothing else will come close to what we can do, in terms of culture. And then, really setting a strategy and sticking to it and not deviating. And I continually, I get excited about all the opportunity there is in our business, and I continually have to remind myself that it's a long game. The worst thing I can do is keep chopping and changing the strategy. It's about setting a very clear strategy. I'm a real believer in the number 3. People can't focus or remember more than 3 things. So.
Yeah. Is that the BWS? Or that
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Guy, it's fantastic to hear that story and the journey, and some great insights there. The team at Acquire, we're passionate about realising opportunities, and it's clearly that's something that's close to your heart as well. So
absolutely.
Thank you for your time, and good luck on the continued journey.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Cheers.